Welcome to the latest episode of Trojans Wired, the podcast, which is an in-house production of the website Trojans Wire. We are part of the College Wire Network. CC Clay and I coming at you on our latest USC women's basketball show. And hey, we knew this was a death trap. We knew this was ambush city going up to Seattle after the mentally draining, exhausting game against UCLA. Just get out of the Pacific Northwest with a dub, catch that plane flight back to Southern California, where the Trojans, they're not going to have to leave their home base until the Big Ten tournament. So really, they just have one plane flight out of Southern California over the next few weeks. So just get past this little hurdle in Seattle. And we know from past experience, it's a root canal usually at Washington. Huskies stretch out those possessions. They don't give you too many looks at the basket. They slow the game down. And down 12, late third quarter, that was a test. That was a hurdle. And this team, it wasn't going to be pretty, CC. You know that. I know that. It wasn't going to be pretty. They got the dub over UW. Your reactions to a very tough, gritty USC win.
Yeah, I was kind of nervous. Well, I won't say kind of. I was really nervous about this game just because Washington is the team that came into Galen last year and beat us before Juju had her phenomenal 51-point game. And this time it was kind of reversed. She had a 38-point game against UCLA, and then we go into Washington, and she still had a great game, but it was just a trap game all the way. And the way Washington plays, they're just so gritty and they play so dirty, and then they were throwing triples and doubles on both Kiki and Juju. And that first half, we just looked out of sorts. Like and the one thing that I will say is, we've seen so many teams that play doubles and triples against us now. We're far into the season. It happened last year too, but that was a different team. This year now we have a new team and we see doubles and triples all the time. And I just think now we got to get used to seeing doubles and triples because I don't think it's going to change from here on out. And so our team has to be mentally ready to go into a game saying, okay, if they doubled you, this is where my open spaces are on the court. And when they're getting doubled, who's ever getting doubled, whether that be Kiki or Ju, they got to know where the open players are on the court. I mean, we have to start understanding our floor space. We have to start understanding where we are as a team, especially when we get doubled and tripled. But shout out to Washington. They came ready to pull the upset. They did their job, and I'm so proud of this women's team for USC that they just didn't get flustered. They just picked at it, 1 second at a time. They just kept picking at it and picking at it, and then they started hitting shots in the second half. They started going to Kiki down low a lot more, and she was able to finally start hitting her shots in the paint and around the rim. And then Kennedy, you can't say enough about Kennedy, right? She hit three threes that were just very important for us. So, just shout out to the whole team. So proud of them for fighting through this tough game.
Yeah, Kennedy Smith, man, she really is the player who just refuses to allow this team to lose. I mean,
Yeah,
that really seems to be her overall identity. And obviously, just a tremendous defensive competitor, but really beyond that, she when everything gets tough, she just puts her foot down and makes plays at either end of the court that hey, we're not losing. It's just not happening, not on my watch. And you've
yeah,
remarked, CC, that like she gets offended when someone scores on her. She takes it personally.
yeah,
Like and hey, Juju, the superstar, Kiki, a legitimately great player in her own right, but no one takes things quite as personally as Kennedy Smith, and in a good way, right?
yeah,
It's not as
yeah,
though she's getting overwrought emotionally in a way that detracts from what she's doing. No, like she channels grievance into success. And
yeah,
that's not an easy thing to do as an athlete, but Kennedy Smith, a freshman, she's able to do that. It's very impressive to
yeah.
watch.
And she's so monotone. She just keeps a straight face. I hardly ever see her smile, even on good plays. You don't see her smile. She's just like, I want to win before I smile. You know what I mean? I want to win before I smile because it's not over till it's over. And that's her attitude. And she's going to play as hard as she can down to that final second until the buzzer goes off. And she's just, man, she came from Etiwanda, which was a championship program. And it's just amazing to watch her and play her play when she gets into her mantra of I'm not going to let this team lose, and she's so calm. So the one thing that I would say about this entire team is that they all stay calm. They're just, if you watch their facial expressions and if you watch their body movements, even when they're not playing well, because they certainly were not playing well in that first half. They made a lot of offensive errors and they made a lot of defensive errors. Shout out my YouTube video. Make sure you go watch it because I pointed all that stuff out. It's up and it's loaded now. But, I have to give myself a shout out. But they stay calm throughout the whole, like it's a process. Okay, step one, we're not playing bad. Step two, we're not playing bad. Step three, okay, we're playing okay. And then step four, okay, now we got it together. And they're calm the whole time. You never see them get flustered. Never. And I think they get that from Juju because if Juju's like that. Juju's very, even keel. And I think that just resonates through the team now. Everybody's just even keel, except like when somebody makes a layup, you'll see people get high and, high five and jump around and so on and so forth. Kennedy does do that, but you don't see her smiling. She might go like this, yeah, or, give the body movements or whatever, but you never see her get too high or too low.
Yep. The leader on the court sets the tone. That's Juju and also the coaching staff. The coaching staff keeps this team together. You have to think that Lindsey Gottlieb was aware of this situation, knowing that, you're just not going to, especially college, pros, different discussion, but college, like you're not going to play every game with the same level of intensity. So if the first 2.5 quarters don't go the way they wanted, I'm sure that Lindsey Gottlieb was saying, hey, we knew this was going to be a bumpy ride. Let's just be ready and rise up when the moment requires it. That's what the team did. Cece, I know we're going to want to get into the stats, some things that really stuck out to you. We always at least do a brief statistical overview of every game this team plays. But before we do that, one real question, I think a question a lot of USC fans are interested in, that's why I'm asking it to you, is, okay, we knew this was a trap game. We knew it was a letdown game. How do you balance, that reality versus, like there are certain standards and there are certain patterns of play that this team needs to be better at. You talked about the double teams thrown at Juju. Like you can only use the ambush game so much as a crutch. You also have to be dealing with, hey, we need to be better. Like there are certain things we need to be used to. It's almost March. It's late in the season. Like some things need to be down pat. So how do you
Yeah.
balance kind of, this was a unique trap game situation, but also, hey, there are certain things this team needs to be replicating and performing more normally. How do you get at that tension point?
It's funny because I watched Lindsay throughout the game, and you know, I was I was tweeting with a friend of mine during the whole game, and we were making comments to each other like, "Oh, I'd sit this person," or "I'd sit this person," and then Lindsay wouldn't sit these people, and then they came out and performed in the fourth quarter, and then we were laughing about it, and I made the comment, "I guess that's why I'm not a coach," you know what I mean, and so on and so forth. So it was just kind of funny, but I think that the way coaches handle it are different, different scenarios, and she knows her players more than anybody else. She knows how to get them going. She knows when they're frustrated. She knows when they're down. She knows the right buttons to push. So she knows. But what I will say is that I think it's really important that between now and getting into March, these girls, when they're on the court and they see a double and a triple, they really need to know what to do. I mean, because right now it seems like we're way into the season. We got 3 more games left in the season. They've been seeing doubles and triples the whole season, even in non-conference, and they still look like they're kind of lost on what to do when Juju gets doubled or when Kiki gets doubled or when they throw three at Juju. And it's just about being calm and reading the defense. And then again, understanding the scout. And it doesn't, to me right now, it doesn't have to be a particular scout on a particular team. It has to be a scout watching, I don't care if it's watching YouTube videos. How do you break out of a double? What are you doing when a double comes at you? What do you do when a triple comes at you as a team? And there's plenty of videos that players can watch to understand spaces and spots and so on and so forth of what players can do and what's the right read and what's not the right read and so on and so forth. But I think we're at a point now where there's only so much a coach can do. The player has to hold themselves accountable. The players have to hold themselves into a different standard of understanding their roles. And the players have to hold themselves to a different standard as understanding that they get better through helping their teammates. So I'll leave it at that.
I think there's one follow-up needed for that, CC, and that is that when you're asking several freshmen to handle major minutes as part of the team's normal rotation, how do you balance the expectations for the freshmen to get those reads down versus the veterans on this team? And so, and how does that affect the lineup combinations that Gottlieb is going to put out there in crunch time when we get into March? Like how do you, how much are you willing to entrust to the freshmen, particularly on the bench, Heckel and
Yeah.
Howell versus TVO? Like, and a lot of national commentators. I don't know. I don't want to go out on a limb and say that USC fans think this if I'm not sure about it. But I think a lot of national commentators think Kaylee Heckel should be getting more minutes than TVO. I think that's the national read on this
Yeah.
team. It might not be the right read, but I think I see that when I see non-USC folks commenting on this team. But it just, whether that's right or wrong, it just brings up the point in terms of players needing to be second nature in terms of making reads and responses. That could be a guiding factor in terms of whether Gottlieb is having the freshmen on the court or the veterans on the court. How do you process that and make sense of that?
Yeah, I think again it's going to have to do with matchups. You know what I mean? Because every team is different, and you'll see when we play Michigan State, they're a more guard heavy team. So I think you're going to see Heckel get a lot more points, and they're not big guards. So I think that's part of it. I think the other part of it is, if the freshmen are going in, if the freshmen go in and they're playing, then they'll get more minutes, right? You want to be that freshman on the court, and you want to be playing so well that any coach will not want to take you off because you're playing so well. But then, excuse me, if you're on the court and you're not doing what you need to be doing, then you're going to sit, and you're going to go with more experience like a TVO. But yeah, I've seen that commentation or that commentating too, as far as Heckel should be getting more minutes than TVO, and I just don't agree with that because TVO, she's bigger, she's stronger, she's a leader, she has more experience. She understands defenses, and during crunch time, she's a lot better. So, but I understand what you're saying, and people are going to think what they want, and I think a part of that is people aren't looking at the whole game or the game as a whole. They look at Heckel when she comes in and she's so speedy and she's so fast and she can get to the basket. So they're looking at the box score. But there's so much more to a basketball game than that box score that you and I see, but not all the fans or all the coaches sitting on their couches and so on and so forth trying to call the game. So, again, a lot of it is maturity. And so Heckel and Avery, have to be able they have to study. I mean, that's all I can say. You have to study and it's repetition. You have to understand reads. I mean, basketball is a game of chess. It's not checkers, it's chess. And you got to be playing the chess game all the time, especially with defenses that are doing the doubles and triples. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I just think that it depends on matchup and it depends on when she gets on the floor, is she doing what she's supposed to be doing on both sides of the court, not just one side of the court?
Yeah, the big reminder, you said it about, it's not about points, it's not about the box score, it's overall impact and cohesion, integration with the team and the game that you're playing. Not the game that you're theoretically playing, but the game you're actually playing. And Clarice Okunwafo didn't score against UCLA and yet was a central defining factor in that game. It's not just about points. God,
Yeah.
there are a few things that casual basketball fans need to understand more than that. You don't have to score points to be hugely beneficial to your team. All right, so having just talked about how points don't matter, let's go into your statistical overview of this game. And it did matter that USC scored 5 points more than Washington. That's where points matter. Scoring more than
Yeah.
the other team over 40 minutes. But in this game, what statistically did stand out to you? Obviously, in the first three quarters versus actually, the first 28 minutes versus the last 12. Like that, USC late in the third quarter began its comeback from the 12-point deficit. What stood out to you statistically?
I have to tell you, if you look at the stats, you would think that Washington won this game. Just because Washington out rebounded us, which that stat right there alone, I just can't believe they out rebounded us. They were a smaller team. They only had one player that was 6'3", 6'4". All the rest were 5'9", 5'10", 5'11". They were smaller than us, but they out rebounded us. The one stat that was good for us was we turned them over 15 times and we only got 9 turnovers. So I'm really impressed with, the last two games, we haven't been turning the ball over. So we're getting really good at that. Um, and we didn't get any blocks. That's the other thing that amazed me. We're averaging 8, 9 blocks a game and we got one block the entire game, one block. So, and the best stat of all, we scored 69 points and they scored 64. That's the best stat of all. Besides Kennedy, her EFG was 75%. When you have an EFG, an effective field goal like that, you're a winner. So yeah, and it's funny. Washington got 3 blocks to our one, and they were the smaller team. So go figure, right? Just a game that I just when I look at the stats, what 3-point percentage? We shot 34% from the field, and that's what we have to continue to do if we want to win games. We need to be right around between 32 and 34% to win games. Um, they shot 44% though. So that's why they were able to stick with us. And as you saw, they were more of a perimeter team anyway. They weren't really an inside post up type of team. They were more of a perimeter 3-point shot or dribble drive type of team. So um, that's about it. Even our EFG was, we shot our EFG was a 45.3 and theirs was a 46.4. So they outplayed us in almost every category, and we won that game in the last 5 minutes of the fourth quarter. So
Yeah, I think just to flesh out the ambush or trap game angle, and because we've been presenting it from the USC side, and understandably so, it's a USC podcast. That the UCLA game was really draining, and then you fly up to Seattle, and like you're probably going to have an emotional come down. But
yeah,
there's also the Washington side of this. Washington's a bubble team. Washington's right near the bubble cut line. So like
yeah,
Washington badly needed this game
yes, they
to get
did.
into the NCAA tournament. And besides, it's Juju, it's USC. Like this was Washington's Super Bowl. So it's that dynamic where, USC is trying to take everyone's best punch over 30 games. But for a team like Washington, like this one, they circled on the calendar. They've been waiting to play this game for months. Just that variance between, the champion just trying to manage its workload over the long haul, but the underdog, might not be very good for weeks at a time, but this game, circle it. Like that's part of why we talk about these ambush trap games. So it wasn't just USC's come down from the UCLA high. It was also Washington treating this game as its game of the year. That has to be appreciated when we talk about trap and ambush games. All right. So moving
They're gonna
along,
play, and they're
CC.
gonna
Go
they're gonna
ahead.
play their best. Just like
Yes.
when UCLA went out, UCLA had to go out to Washington and play, and they almost beat UCLA. I think UCLA won it in the fourth quarter as well. Washington was sticking with them throughout the entire game, and then UCLA pulled away in the last half of the fourth quarter of that game. Just some teams uh, don't match up well. You know what I mean? And Washington, they match up well with us, but we don't match up well with them. If that makes sense, they just
Yeah.
because we're the better team, they're always going to, just like Iowa, they're going to play way up here when they usually play way down here. So they are a bubble team and they had a lot to play for. So it's going to be interesting to continue to watch them these last three games and find out where they end up.
Totally. And, like this is the Big Ten this year, but we know Washington from the Pac-12 era. Washington's always that thorny opponent, and Washington would
Yep.
upset Stanford and Tara.
Yep.
Washington gets up for the biggest teams in the Pac-12. That's carried over to the Big Ten. That's just the way it is. That's
Yep.
just the way it is. And
Yep.
the other teams, they're not going to win 25 games, but they're going to play you like it's the end of the world
Yeah.
when you're
Yeah.
on the other side. That's life as the big dog. That's
Yep.
life for USC. We knew it was going to be tough. It was tough, but they got the dub over UW. All right, let's now move along to Michigan State. And as we preview this game, we have to point out Michigan State almost did USC a gigantic favor, came really close to beating UCLA. Now, of course, we have to mention Lauren Betts was out with an injury. That's little bit of a factor, just to understate. But nevertheless,
No injury.
Michigan State was up by 4 with a little bit over 4 minutes left, couldn't finish the job. What did you see from Michigan State in that game, and how does it set up this game against USC?
Yeah, Michigan State, they're good. I've had this game circled, because nobody's been talking about this game, but I've been watching Michigan State through this whole season, and I've been telling people, man, we got to watch out for Michigan State. I'm telling you, it's Michigan State we got to worry about. And so when I watched the game, I saw a couple things about Michigan State that stood out to me. One, they start a four-guard lineup. So they go four guards in the forward, not even a post. Their post player is 6'3". She used to play for University of Oregon, Grace Van Sluten, and she was really good for Oregon. She was a McDonald's All-American, I think, when she came out of high school, I think. And she's really good. And then they also have Jaden Simmons, who used to play for Arizona State, and she was one of the best guards for Arizona State before transferring into Michigan State. So you got two Pac-12 players on their team, right? So that's one thing, and they start four guards and a forward, and sometimes they go five guards and play a five out. The other thing that I noticed about them is they never have anybody in the post. They play a four out, one in, or they play a five out, and they keep the paint area open so they can dribble drive all the time. And they set up their dribble drives by double picks on the free throw line, or the forward will come out and post high for the guard. But they're always throwing picks and popping out to the wing. So they run a lot of pick and rolls to the backside. They run double picks for their guards. They run a four out or a five out, and they keep the paint open. If the post is posting up on the box, it's not even on the block. They'll post up between the block and between the free throw line. So that paint area is always wise. It's crazy. And then they play man. They'll throw a hedge. They press. They like to get out and run on transition. They've shot about 500 threes over the season. So they do shoot three pointers. But so yeah, so that's my rundown on Michigan State. We got to be ready.
Okay, I think a natural question becomes how does Beth Burns make sure that Rhea Marshall's there to protect the rim and that she doesn't get drawn out to the basket, or if she does get drawn out necessarily to guard a three-point shooter, or a forward, kind of near the elbow, free throw line extended. What's the counter move to make sure that you have some deterrence at the rim?
Yeah, so I think that their main plan of attack is always a dribble drive first. They'll dribble drive and kick before they actually run a play to shoot from the three. So it's always dribble drive. So I think, we pack the paint, we crowd the paint a little bit and try and let them beat us from the outside first. And then if they start hitting, then we'll kind of expand or hedge out our players. It's going to be interesting to see the counteract that Lindsay does and Beth Burns defensively and offensively. If we're going to go more with a four guard offense, which I think we will tomorrow night. We won't start the four guard offense, but I think that we'll see a four guard offense on the floor a lot more just to match up with their speed. But I think Rhea, yeah, Rhea will get a lot of time, but I think that Kiki's going to get more time in that paint area to guard the rim.
Okay, so another question is, do you want to match up against their speed with a smaller lineup, or what about the high-low offense where you have Kiki and Rhea throwing the ball over the top against the smaller lineup? How workable is that, and what are the trade-offs involved?
I think it just depends how Rhea is playing, honestly. If Rhea comes ready to play, then we'll see a high low, because we're outsized by them. But I really think that we'll match up better with our four guard lines with our four guard lineup with Avery and TVO or Avery and Heckle tomorrow night. And just to keep the ball moving and just because they're fast. And so defensively, we're going to have to be fast as well.
Going to be interesting. And, again, Lauren Betts did not play for UCLA against Michigan State. Maybe that works to USC's benefit, that Michigan State wasn't going up against size, power, and length against UCLA, or at least not as much as it's used to. And maybe USC's size matters more in this game, that Michigan State might get thrown off balance. But again, the needing to counter Michigan State's guards with the smaller lineup, definitely something USC will need to be ready to do against the Spartans. All right, before we close down the show, CC, there were two main event women's basketball games on Sunday outside of USC and UCLA both surviving scares in the Big Ten. We had UConn thrashing South Carolina in Columbia by 29. No one saw that one coming. And then Texas comes from 12 down. So Texas and USC both came from 12 down in the third quarter to win games. Texas comes from 12 down to beat Kim Mulkey and LSU. And just before we started this show off air, we just went over some talking points here and just where would you rank these various teams? And, all these teams could be like that number 2 seed in the same region as USC if the Trojans get a 1 seed, or they could be the 1 seed in USC's region where the Trojans are the 2 seed. So like lots of possible Elite Eight opponents for USC here. But how would you, any basic comments in terms of where you would rank those various teams, some observations you have on the national scene?
Yeah, on the national scene, I got to be honest. I think UConn, that they're the number one team in my eyes. They're the number one team just because of how good that they're flowing together right now. They have AZ Fudd back, and she's hitting on all cylinders along with Sarah Strong and Paige Beckers being the distributor that she is. They have a really good team. So Notre Dame is the number one team, but I put UConn right there with them. Uh, then I would say, let me see, it'd be Notre Dame, UConn, Texas, or UCLA, I would put three. USC, I would put four. And Texas, I would put five. I'm not really keen on Texas right now. They win by power and defense, but they're not. I don't know. I just haven't seen anything about them that I think there should be in the top two. That's just my opinion. LSU is at seventh, which is correct. I think what's going to be interesting is the way the committee turns this out, because when I looked at the top 16, if you really look at the top 16, the way the committee had it, they made it so South Carolina had the easiest path to the Final Four. If you look at the teams that they had in the top 16 reveal, if you haven't, go back and look at it, and it becomes obvious that they set South Carolina up so far to be in the top 16. Now that's going to change if we beat UCLA again and if South Carolina continues to have a downslide. But as of right now, the way that the top 16 reveal came in, South Carolina was set up as a number one in the easiest region or easiest path to get to the Final Four.
Just a point of clarity here, was that top 16 reveal before Sunday's games, before South Carolina lost?
Yes, yes, it
Okay.
was.
So one would certainly assume that configuration probably would be changed at least to a certain degree.
Yeah,
It's going to be really interesting to see, and not to say that, the round of 32 or the Sweet 16 and the NCAA tournament are going to be a piece of cake. They won't be. Like we've seen the growth of women's basketball over the past decade. It's no longer the UConn Invitational, which it
Right.
was for a few years with Brianna Stewart and those teams. It's now a really deep, balanced field. So not implying that the Sweet 16 is going to be a breeze, but it is really stacked up on those top two seed lines. Like there are like 8 to 10 teams that could legitimately walk away with the national title. So it's just going to be a point of intrigue. And we'll discuss this, when we get into March and the brackets. But just to kind of introduce the point now, how those 8 teams are set up, which teams are seeded 1 and 2 in each region,
Yeah.
that's going to be a major talking point for us
Yeah. It's
when
going to
we
be really
get
important.
March Madness. Absolutely. All right, CC, any
And I'll
other
tell you what,
thoughts? And
I'll tell
go
you, yeah,
ahead.
I'll tell you what, the sleeper team that I would not want to play just because of their style of play is Tennessee. I don't I don't want to see them until the regional eight. Hopefully they'll get beat by then. But you don't want to see Tennessee early because of the style of play that they have. I mean, they're in shape. To play the way they play, they have to be in shape. And by the time teams get into March and Tennessee's running in and out players every 2 minutes and running the whole time, teams are going to be tired, and then they get a day break and have to move on to the next game. I would not want to face Tennessee. That's one team I don't want to face.
Well, maybe they'll go to UCLA's region.
Yes.
At
Let's
any
hope.
rate, Selection Sunday is still 3.5 weeks away, but it's like we're getting a taste of, like the matchups are going to be really important in terms of the road to the Final Four in
Yeah.
Tampa. All right, Cece, as we wind down the show, promote your YouTube channel, what you have going on there, anything else you'd like to mention.
Yeah, just my keys to victory, real quick, for the Michigan State game. I think that we need to press them because they looked out of sorts when UCLA pressed them a little bit. But it depends how our legs are. We might be kind of fatigued from the last 2 games that we played and not getting enough rest in between games. But if we can press, I would press. I would look to see if they go to a four-guard lineup, limit our turnovers against Michigan State, and turn them over. They do average 15 turnovers a game. That's their average, so we should be able to turn them over and limit their dribble drive. We're going to have to limit their dribble drive and defend appropriately as they like to leave that paint wide open. So it's going to be interesting to see if we hedge, if we switch, if our help side comes to help like they should on that dribble drive, and if our on-ball defense, if our players are going to be able to move their feet and stay up to cut off the dribble drive. Oh,
Okay,
and so
and your
YouTube.
YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Yes, let's talk
So
USC women's basketball.
yeah, let's talk USC women's basketball on YouTube. Go like and subscribe. Tell your friend, tell your auntie, tell your mom, tell your dad. If they're USC fans or if they just love analytics, to go check out my channel. I do have the Washington USC game uploaded now, so check that out. It's about 30 minutes and it goes over plays that I broke down, which you will find very interesting, as I did. I was very truthful and honest in that video. Some of you guys may not agree, but you know me, I'm gonna keep it 100 at all times. Love my girls. Can't wait to see them on Wednesday at Galen Center. Hope you guys come out. But yes, like and subscribe, and please go watch the videos.
We're getting closer to March, folks. So, if like each game feels like just kind of a prelude to March, all right. But like CC's analysis is setting things up for when we get to March. You want to have that body of knowledge going into March Madness. So CC Clay is your companion for the best analysis for
By the
USC
way,
women's basketball.
somebody tweeted because UCLA went and watched my video,
Mhm.
the UCLA Wire went and watched my video, and somebody put on X after that I need to chill out. I shouldn't be giving away too much of our information on what we do on offense. I just thought that was hilarious. So yeah, maybe I should, maybe I should, I don't know. But I just thought that was funny, that they said, "Oh, you're giving away too much of our information," or something like that. It was kind of funny.
No disrespect intended to, a very good basketball coach, but I think we would just all agree that Corey Close did not have one of her better games against USC.
Yeah,
And that's the pretty modest point that you made, and which I agree with. I mean, pretty much the whole city of Los Angeles will agree with. We know that
yeah.
Corey Close has to be better. I don't think you were giving away some sensitive diplomatic secrets
Yeah, and I
in
did the
that
same thing.
game.
I do the same thing with my analysis of USC. If
Absolutely.
the plays are not right or they did something wrong, I call it out. I call it. I might not be right with what I'm calling out, but I'm just giving my opinion of what I think should be happening in the play, and I could be wrong as anybody. But it's just I just say what I see. You know what I mean? And it goes from there. So if USC does something good, I call it out. If USC does something not so good, I call it out. It is what it is. I still love the team though.
Yeah, I mean, that's what coaching is. Here's a good play, here's a bad play. Like, we're not trying to make things personal. Here's like, and improvement is based on understanding why something worked and understanding why something didn't work. It's both
Yeah.
and. It's not
Yeah.
either or, and it's not meant as like personal attack. This is just you learn from
No.
both your successes and your failures. That's part of analysis. Life is too short to not tell the truth. Folks, if you're listening to this podcast, you might be listening to us on a Tuesday or a Wednesday. But hey, if you're a USC fan, you remember Pete Carroll, Tell the Truth Monday. We're recording this on Monday night. Tell the Truth Monday with CC Clay. Think of it that
Yeah.
way. So, CC, thanks for joining us once again, and we will talk to you after the Michigan State game. Thanks everyone for listening once again to our USC women's basketball podcast here at Trojans Wired.